to the Red Dirt Road podcast. I'm your host, Marshall Farnsworth, here with Alex Breitenbach, talking about the Garth Brooks, The Road I'm On, episode 2. How's it going?
Doing just fine. How about you?
It is not too bad here over at my mom's place in Wellington. We're
Nice.
in the moving process right now, so we're, find yourself back doing a podcast back in the parents' basement.
Oh yeah,
a couple podcasts now.
Getting back to the nitty gritty, I guess.
And then Alex is the opposite. No, most of these podcasts have been at your parents' house, but now you're back at your college.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, tentatively, I don't know how long I'll be here. It all just depends on how the cookie crumbles in terms of the cases and how the university handles all of their stuff with regards to testing and all of that. Right now it's pretty uncertain, but I only have one in-person class, but hey, I'm in Ithaca, so I'm happy to be on location, and hopefully this is where I will be for a little bit.
Definitely. Well, a couple new things I wanted to mention, because we forgot to mention this like 2 podcasts ago. We have gotten over 500 streams. Yeah. Now, our recent videos have not been doing as great as the original ones, but I think that people are still coming to listen to the podcast, listen to those first ones and stuff. So we've got over 500 podcast streams on most of these regular apps, and then almost 100 on YouTube. So we're almost at 600 now.
Yes.
So that's pretty cool. And then other little bit of news, check out, I'm actually getting a new podcast called The Fake Punt. It's going to be a monthly football podcast. By the time this comes out, you can go check it out. It's going to be with me, my stepdad, Tom, and my stepbrother, Derek. It's going to be all stats, analytics, rankings of the teams, no news, breaking down the teams, because I'm a math major and I want to kind of break down the teams like that. So go check that out. Going to be a little bit longer than this, but only once a month.
Yeah, a little bit more of what's that, like NFL, XFL, stuff like that.
Yeah, NFL and college football mostly.
Nice.
All right, so episode 2. Let's get into this. I got some notes for this. Again, like if you find something where I'm talking, don't be afraid, butt in, say something catches your eye or something. So this one, same length as the other one, hour and 25 minutes. I actually just woke up this morning, watched the whole thing through. Overall, it kind of seemed like, not quite as much stuff in it as the first episode. Not sure why. I felt like it kind of hit on certain points, but it's talked about them for longer maybe. Started out in Nashville, Tennessee. It's talked about Garth Brooks being the greatest selling solo artist of all time. They showed his first ever filmed recording session. He was performing something there. The artists were admiring Garth Brooks' music. Got into the episode 1 recap, showed the intro. Then it went back to that Goodlettsville, Tennessee, that area there. He was talking about his family. What?
I was going to say, yeah, that sort of cuts back to his family ranch.
Yeah.
I got to say, it kind of gives, again, that aura that we saw in the first video about, like he's not just a big shot country star. He is also a family man, and that's very much a part of him, like, his home and stuff. That was
yeah,
good to see that again.
They cut back to that quite often. They were talking about his family. He started talking a lot about his children at this point in the episode, which was a common occurrence throughout the entire episode. He's got 3 daughters. Taylor, the oldest, who's a master's student. August is the middle child, and then Allie was the youngest child, and it also seems like she's kind of the singer of the family. He says that your parents give you 2 things: people They show you the people that you want to be and people that you don't want to be. Then it kind of cut to a few different kind of events in his, during the 90s, his kind of career there. LA in April 1992, you had the Rodney King riots, and it says this was kind of interesting because I wasn't sure where they were going to go with this. He was actually at the ACM Awards getting Entertainer of the Year, and all those riots were happening, and apparently Travis Tritt came up to him and said, "Hey, we got to get the hell out of here. They're burning down the city." And they drove all the way to the Grand Canyon. And then it was at that moment where he knew that he wanted to release this song, "We Shall Be Free," which it seems like at the time people are saying it's a very liberal song. And I have not listened to the song in its entirety, but just from hearing it on the episode, it didn't seem really too liberal, other than just the fact that it's talking about you can love who you want, kind of, not really something that you have in country music. But
I mean,
go
I'd
ahead.
touch on that 1 sec. I think that Garth Brooks' overall message with that song, and again, it's obvious from the documentary that the '92 LA riots had a big impact on his life, and on the song that he wrote, and a lot of people gave him flack for having that song, and they saw it. Some people saw it as a departure from his sound, from country music. People thought he was kind of selling out with that song. Now, I mean, honestly, I don't think that song is that, like you said, it's not that liberal. Honestly, it's just trying to find common purpose. Only then
The next thing it goes to, I thought was really cool. I never have known this before. It goes to 1993, where he was approached to actually perform the national anthem at the Super Bowl. And then also they were, I think, debuting the song, the "We Shall Be Free" music video, I believe. And then there was a big some trouble brewing. It said that NBC kind of threatened to not show the "We Shall Be Free" music video last minute, and he was like, "Well, I'm not doing this." They ended up showing it anyways, and he sang and stuff. And then 1994, he started touring in Dublin and then England. He had a world tour from 93 to 98. And that was kind of peak Garth Brooks. People loved him everywhere. He was really nervous about that, being in another country. They talked about country music is a very, it's part of the reason country music not really as big as pop music, is that country music is more regional to the United States. Pop music kind of a little more generic in its sound, kind of universal.
Yeah.
But they loved it over there, which was kind of really cool.
Well, and just what I'll say about that too is that is definitely a massive stepping stone in his career, the point at which he goes global. Like the part of that documentary that talks about his conversation on the telephone with the promoter in Ireland. He said to the guy, "Are you sure you have the right person?" Because he can't believe that. Because again, like you said, I think that country music largely is, again, every region of the world has their own unique music. I think for America, those two region-specific genres would be bluegrass and country music. There's nothing more American than the two of those. And I think they go hand in hand, and which is why it's so unbelievably amazing that Garth Brooks was able to tour worldwide, and that's something that almost had never been done before, with the exception of maybe Johnny Cash and a couple others earlier in the 60s. Because I remember that they say in the video, like, when you ask somebody overseas what country music is, they say Johnny Cash, because they don't know anybody else other than like the really, really like show-stopping world famous people. And then for Garth Brooks to do that is again a really big stepping stone for his career. And that was
that was huge. And then this next thing that they talked about was, just pretty much just as big. is when they get into New York, and he does the same thing. They asked him to perform in 1997 in August in Central Park, New York. They're having some kind of thing with Central Park and HBO. And he said, I'm not sure how many people are going to show up. Obviously, he knew there would be a decent amount, but it was such a big park. He's thinking, man, this place is going to not look like it's, very filled, because it's like New York City. That's not exactly the breeding grounds of country music by any stretch. And it was a massive crowd. He said he stayed in his hotel room, went outside, and they said that they gave him a number. It was like 800,000 people. And by the end of it, they said they estimated there was a little over 1 million people there, which is insane. That's insane. I think the Cleveland Cavaliers, when they won the championship here, there was like 1 million people in attendance. And that's for, there wasn't a championship here in Cleveland for 50 years. And Garth Brooks had that one concert. That's pretty insane.
Yeah, that is definitely insane. It's to the point where, and also to touch on that a little bit, it's to the point where they got Billy Joel. They have a cameo from Billy Joel talking about that. He says, I see all these people walking down Fifth Avenue in New York City wearing cowboy hats. That's not a common occurrence. What could possibly be going on? And then you look and you see Garth Brooks performing in Central Park. Now that's something that had really never been done before, because again, country music is often thought about that as that regional sort of vibe. It's not really, meant for the cities, and that's, I think, what changed that.
Now this next part is kind of where I thought this episode was going to kind of take off. When we had projected what this episode would do, I kind of thought it would largely be kind of the downfall and hiatus of Garth Brooks and then his rise again. But, it actually did talk quite a bit about still his popularity in the 90s. But at this point, started talking about his marriage kind of suffering from touring. And then he created this, I'd never heard of this before, this pop album based on an imaginary singer, Chris Gaines. And it was supposed to be the soundtrack for a movie. And the movie never came out. And so a lot of people thought it was just really weird, which it kind of is weird if you don't have the movie to it. Because, you have Garth Brooks and he's looking kind of gothic and he has this pop album and, people are thinking, what's going on here? And so that, people are kind of, what's this all about? Towards the end of the 90s. It talked about his parents coming to every show. And, this is kind of, from the last two things I said, this is kind of the downfall. His mom passed away towards the end of the 90s, throat cancer, and he got divorced was getting divorced towards the end of the 90s, and he stepped away from music. So those three things, they said, kind of hit him all at the same time. January 2000, AMA Awards, he won the 90s Artist of the Decade. And then in October 2000, he retires from music to be a father, moves back to Oklahoma to raise his kids, co-raise them with his ex-wife. And he had some kind of interesting thing, the way that the kids would see each parent every day. They would see both parents every day. Yeah. They would sleep at the parents' house, and then whatever parents' house they weren't sleeping at, the other one picking up, bring them to school and stuff. Yeah. And he did that for like 14 years. He did that from like 2000 until 2014. And then he got right back on the horse, started touring again.
I got to say, there's something to be said about his hiatus and what that means, like, to Garth, as not only as a musician, but as a person. And it really shows that he is devoted. Again, it shows the family side of him, that he is devoted to his family, and the sacrifices that he makes are really important. And it's to the point where, he recounts being in the 90s that, while he loved again, people love the fame, but fame is also poisonous to a certain extent, in that it takes him away from his family. It takes him away from his wife. Like, he got so popular, but at what cost? It cost him his wife. It cost him his daughters, and eventually it cost him like having to retire. But having the wherewithal and taking the initiative and saying, what, I'm going to now is the right time. I've had my my like big pinnacle moment there. I'm going to step away from a while. I'm going to take some time, devote it to the family. There was a quote he says, like, I looked at my girls and I didn't realize like I didn't know them that well, but I damn sure was gonna get to know them, or something like that. He said something along the lines. I also got to say, with regard to his marriage, like, in spite of the fact that he realized that things were failing, like, they decided that they were going to be actively involved in their children's lives. It wasn't going to be a traditional divorced house where you spend, like, where you travel to somebody else and say, no, 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 they're living on the same property for, like, but just living in different houses. Like,
Yeah.
that's crazy. But yet he did it.
Yeah, it talks about Trisha Yearwood after that. Goes back to the first episode where they had met 13 months after he'd got married. There's kind of a connection there, and they were both married at the time. And then he proposes to her, obviously after he's divorced, in 2005, Bakersfield, California, at some sort of a concert. Trisha Yearwood becomes a mom for the first time. She talked about only having a dog previously, and the kids, to a certain extent, embraced her, called her Mama T. It seemed like the oldest daughter kind of gave her fits. They said something kind of disturbing to me. The one child grabbed a tarantula. She said she would grab a tarantula and put it in the freezer. And she said that in this sort of, I kind of had to pause it and think, well, wait a minute now, this is, I got a few questions. First of all, they got tarantulas out there? That's terrifying. Tarantulas?
That was the one.
I thought that was like Australia. They got them tarantulas down there in Oklahoma. That was my first thought. And then also, like, why are you, like, a child is picking them up? How are you catching them? You're picking them up. I don't know. And then it's like you're putting them in the freezer, and I'm thinking, like, it's falling out, and I'm thinking my next question is, are they dead? Are they crawling out? I got so many questions, but that was they just kind of slipped that in there. I was like, wait a minute, that's not a normal. I never heard of something like that before. So he said Garth Brooks, he taught his daughters kind of hard work, and they taught him how to do everything, projects outside. They were building bridges and things. And then it went back to being off his hiatus. In 2014, he started touring again when his kids were going to college. He started touring in Dublin and had some trouble when he sold enough tickets for 5 concerts, and they only, for some reason, I don't really understand why, only allowed 3 concerts. And he ended up canceling the whole thing because they would not allow him the planned 5 concerts. So they talked about that for a while. Ended up coming back to the United States, had a world tour from 2014 to 2017, and it was the highest grossing country concert of all time, over $300 million. I think it was $360 some million. And it was the most ticket sales of any concert in North America at 6.4 million ticket sales. The second highest was U2 at 2.7 million.
Ooh.
And then show's kind of wrapping up. They grab, there's a fan he brought on stage, a big fan of Garth Brooks, some sort of a worker there. Garth Brooks indicted into the Country Music Hall of Fame. And then they finish out at this concert that they've kind of been cutting back to all the time. Record-breaking concert, February 2019, 70,000 tickets sold. And then it ends with the credits, and it talks about their his family and his associates talking about their favorite Garth Brooks song. So, what do you think about this episode?
I think that this episode was it was a great way to cap off an unbelievable docu-series. And I think that, again, like I said in the first installment of us breaking down this series, I think that honestly, I'm so glad that they had the opportunity to make this series, that they were able to finally pay homage to Garth Brooks and the impact that he has on country music. And actually not just country music, but the world. And I think that it showcased multiple sides of him. It takes you through step by step his career. You can tell from the interviews with Garth Brooks that he's really passionate about his life, and he speaks openly about it. Just the way he talks in his interviews, I think, is just mesmerizing to me. I get chills from listening to this guy speak in this documentary. It really is an awesome thing just to see him speak candidly, speak openly about his life for the first time, invite them in to show who he is.
I personally did not enjoy the second episode as much as the first one. I thought, I really liked the first episode. The second one, I was kind of selfishly, wanting more of those stories from these little bars and meeting up with so-and-so. And I don't know, I was kind of wanting more, I met Brooks and Dunn for the first time, or I met George Strait for the first time, all those types of things, So talking about his family so much obviously was a huge part, because that's why he left country music. But, I felt it to be not quite that. I don't know if that was really as interesting. But so final thoughts on the series. Do you have any sort of kind of wrap up the series as a whole, both episodes?
I definitely recommend it. I think that both episodes really, they do follow it's a consistent storyline, or not so much a storyline, but it's more like a compilation, little bits and pieces of his life that they like to showcase. And I did really like the way this documentary was set up. It's really cool. In short, it's a great series.
I liked how the series went kind of chronologically. I don't like when the series kind of jump around so much. That don't really make a whole lot of sense for me. I like he, for the most part, kind of went in order from earliest to most recent. That he kind of jumped back to the Goodlettsville, Tennessee, and to the February 2019 concert. But for the most part, it's kind of chronological. I like that.
Well, yeah.
Overall was a good series. I've started to really get into sort of documentaries about bands and about musicians and movies about them. You had the Queen one, whatever that was called, Bohemian Rhapsody.
Was a good, that was a great
documentary.
Movie.
You had the ZZ Top documentary is on Netflix. That's very good. Check that out. That's going to be a wrap today for the Red Dirt Road podcast, and that's a wrap for the Garth Brooks Road I'm On Netflix series. So we will be back with more Kix Brooks, finishing up that album. I think Sacred Ground will be the next one on there. Yeah. So we will see you guys next time.